Welcome to this week's edition of the Belau Report. I'm Jane Belau. Our guest this week is Rochester City Councilman from the 5th Ward, Shaun Palmer, and we welcome you back.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy being here.
Well, you've got a lot to talk about. Now, you're putting your report out tomorrow?
Yes, this week we will be sending to all the postal customers in our ward. About 12,000 of them our yearly update. We did that last year and had a good response, and so we decided to do it again this year. So, and just to be clear, I pay for that myself. I don't take any taxpayer dollars to do that.
Well, good for you.
Thank you.
The budget is what's been talked about most, and I know the county had their budget hearing and had about a dozen people show up. When is yours? Tonight?
Ours is tonight at our 6:15 business meeting. It's going to be a public hearing. I anticipate probably having 10 to 12 people there. Our property tax rate will go up 6.5%, I believe. I think we'll have at least 4 votes for that. And for the average house in Rochester with no value increase, that's $25 a year. Now, last year we held our rate at 0 because of COVID.
Have they addressed that, valuations?
Valuations are going up quite a bit in Rochester because we have a good economy and people want to live here. We're at about a 2% unemployment rate. And so our values of our houses are going up, which is a good thing. You want your asset to go up. You could live in Duluth where the value of your house is going down, and we don't want that.
You sound like the president. Inflation is good and it's transitory. Well, not really.
No, inflation is not good. So
is it recovering from last year in Rochester?
It's been interesting. Some segments have, some segments haven't. We've had a change, and when your largest employer in the state of Minnesota doesn't have 10,000 people coming downtown anymore to work, we have to adjust to that. And so the small businesses downtown have had to pivot, and I'm proud of the ones that have, and they've done a good job of upping their game on the takeout and delivery and doing other things. But we do have about, I'd say 15% of our storefronts downtown empty right now, but we believe that it's going to improve here in the next couple years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that really changes downtown. And parking places are scarcer, and what do you think will be done to replace some of those small businesses?
I think just they will be coming back as people come back and needs will change. You know, one of the examples that I give is that as a Mayo Clinic employee, they could park in the ramp now after 7:30 in the morning, and prior to that it was 17 years. And so you do know that there aren't as many cars coming downtown and people, but there's opportunity there, and I look at it as an opportunity to bring other people from other states to Rochester. We've got great health care, obviously. We've got a good school system. We've got a great place to live. How many people want to get out of big cities, you know, after COVID and go, geez, Rochester handled it pretty good. We made a lot of good investments in our police department, in our health department. We have the best health department in Olmsted County. It's the best health department in all the United States.
One of the big topics of conversation is the Chateau Theater. And what will the council do with the proposals they have for the Chateau Theater, especially when the castle turned to be in violation of one of the principles of their agreement?
Well, I'm not sure that they are out of their agreement. That's not been decided yet or not. And it takes 7 votes, you know, 7 of us on the council, and there's 4 votes it takes. And I think that we don't really have a distinct, this is where we want to go. It was an interesting proposal from the staff, the park department, the music department, and the library put one together. Looking back at that one, I really like that civic music might be the leader in that and can fill that need. There's a need in the community for theater space other than just Mayo Civic Auditorium. And Saturday we were at a concert, and I think it's 1,200 seats in Presentation Hall, and it probably was 900 there. You know, so if that could have been at the Chateau, it would have been more intimate, closer area. You know, the city bought that for 7 years ago and pretty much has sat empty. And we're trying to figure out what we want to do there. It's not going to be cheap, but there's other alternatives. And again, you go back to Duluth, they did their theater. They did a tax credit idea where they sold it to a developer, and a developer fixed it, took the tax credits, and then sold it back to the city. And during that time, they had items in that. And that might be one option that the council's looking at, but I don't think there's any clear idea where it is. It's been a long process for the city of Rochester. I think you remember when Mr. Sofolius bought that building after the city council said no, they didn't want to, and put Barnes and Nobles in. That was probably a pretty good decision. I've been one that thinks that we should sell that building, kind of like what we did with the castle, provide it with things, but I'm open to some other ideas.
The art community is suffering too and needs space for galleries where there are people and willing to buy. And I don't know what's going to happen to them.
Well, it's kind of interesting. We went with a one roof system at the Civic Theater, Mayo Civic Auditorium, and the Art Center, and that has saved dollars. That's building, those 3 buildings are separate buildings, but they're owned by the city of Rochester. So we've consolidated the maintenance of it and taken some of that. They've also gotten away from, this is our building, this is what we do. So the Art Center can put art at Mayo Civic Auditorium, they can do it as the Civic Theater. And Civic Theater then can come over and use it. And so I'm proud of what the Civic Theater has done as a nonprofit. They've come out of the ashes and are moving ahead. And it's a necessary thing for the city to have good theater in Rochester.
Okay. I only know about the galleries, and I know one is going to have to close because they can't afford the rent. And it was one that had a good spot, but gave it up, and it's difficult.
It's very difficult, and it's hard to be a business person. It's hard to be a nonprofit. You have to fill the need. You have to have a plan, and you know, you could be going along the road with no problems, and all of a sudden, pandemic that comes up that no one can predict. You know, I'm in the construction industry, and you know, weather affects us, interest rates affect us. You know, things that we have no control over. All of a sudden, your business can go from selling 40 houses in a year to 2. And what do you do? Back in '89, when I was just graduated from RCC here, interest rates were 21%. And you know, there were no construction jobs, so I went to South Florida and worked. And so you have to pivot, you have to figure out what you want to do and move ahead.
You've made progress on homelessness.
We have, and homelessness really is, and I'm going to use the word county issue, and the county has really stepped up and done a good job. You know, we have the Salvation Army Day Center, and they've done a good job. Because of COVID, we had moved some of the homeless stuff to Mayo Civic Auditorium. And then the Landings took over, and they have the fire station at Silver Lake until the end of April, and then they'll be moving out. And then we have the warming center, the night center, and Olmsted County runs that. There's about 20 hard-to-house people that we have difficult with, but the last results that they just did, they typically did a survey in November, and they did now do a survey in July, and they have less homeless in Rochester than we did prior to that. The other interesting item that I keep bringing up is that the 2020 census showed that our rate of poverty fell by 2%. So we're about 7.5% of our families are in poverty or in the poverty rate, and that fell from 9.5, which it's never good to have any, but you're going to always have some.
Yeah. The homeless shelter, the Landing, that's going to be empty, the fire station in April. What are you going to do with that?
Well, there's a couple things. One of them is Park and Rec needs it for adaptive rec. They want to put them in there. It's not built as a homeless shelter. It was a temporary thing for COVID. And the fire department has said if they stay, we'd have to put a sprinkler system in. And that building was, I think, built in '56, late '50s, and we don't have the money to do that. We're not sure what we want to do in the long term on that project. And you know, it was a temporary solution for COVID, and that has kind of, you know, worked its way through. That the Salvation Army now has the room to do it. They do a phenomenally good job with the homeless.
So are you optimistic about the city now as far as the pandemic goes?
Well, I'm always optimistic, and I think our vaccination rate is high in Rochester. I think that's an important number to have be high. We have no idea how it's going to turn out. I mean, this is something that's unpredictable. It has hurt us as a city. You know, when our hotel motel tax falls by 70%, we're about 30% full. We're right now about 50% full. Your airport takes a hit, you know, and those are all items that we have coming in. Parking takes a hit. Sounds like it's small items, you know, but they do add to the environment of Rochester. Our police department, fire department, all our staff, we kept all our services going. You know, we have over 900 employees, and that's a big concern.
That's really good. But the economic community in Rochester, including the clinic, are we recovering according to your analysis?
What I hear, you know, and I hear what was on the street from the Mayo Clinic people is that things are recovering. I mean, you see signs of it. You see a new proton beam building being proposed that they're going to build next to the other one. They're going to move their loading dock down there by the Methodist Hospital. They're coming back to us soon with their 5-year plan. You know, Mayo Clinic's always done a 5-year plan. It doesn't always come true, but they tell you kind of what we're thinking. This is where we think we're going to be going, so we can plan a little bit better.
How would you give, what kind of marks would you give the DMC?
You know, I look at it and I would give DMC a B-. I think that they've done a lot of nice things in Rochester. You know, it's an infrastructure bill. You know, they put in new sewers and bigger sewers and rerouted our sewers. People don't see that. And, you know, right now we're going to be doing the new walk, Discovery Walk. You know, 75% of that's done underneath the ground. It's a nice whipping boy for people. They kind of like to pick on it. But if you walk down there now on First Avenue, you know, some people don't like the pavers, but it's really nice. I'm not sure in front of the Chateau how that's turning out, but it should be nice. Again, I'm a carpenter, so 4 corners, nail it, make it nice. I'm not an artsy person. I'm not so for me I'm impressed with what they've done. We did do the study on the ADA and made sure that it complied with all the ADA requirements, and it does. There's been some talk that it doesn't, but it does. We have better facilities for everybody down there.
Are you continuing the DMC? What is the ending point?
I'm not sure what the ending point is. It's bringing in more and more dollars. It was interesting, North Broadway was a DMC project for 20% of the funding. So when you drive down and see the different streets and lamps, and you see different fun things to see or good things to see, that's provided by DMC. Now the businesses aren't part of the DMC area, but the road was.
What do you like the best about the project that you just finished, the North Broadway?
Well, North Broadway was an interesting project. It took a long time through the City Council, almost 6 years, to figure out what they wanted to do in planning that. Some of the pipes were 90 years old, and so the infrastructure underneath had to be, and the surface was poor. We couldn't refix it anymore. We had to do something. It's the largest project since flood control, and that was really impressive to me. I didn't know that. The businesses had some assessment on that, and we worked with the Chamber of Commerce, and we worked with them to make sure their assessments were fair. They have to follow, assessments have to follow state law, which means I can only charge you assessment for what I bring the value of your property up. So that was a struggle when I first got on the council. The design was done by the other council, but it adds a lot of nice things to Rochester. I've not had anybody so far tell me that they don't like it.
What about the electric buses?
Again, you know, I'm not a big fan of electric buses. I don't think that we've gone through the learning curve on that. Duluth, again, in cold weather, had to pull their buses. The mayor will disagree with me, but the buses that we just bought for 2 of them are going to be on a flat surface. They're not going to do the hills, and they're not going to be out all the time because they need to be recharged. So I'm just not there yet on the bus technology for the cold weather. I mean, you know, even our diesel buses that had some different fuel in it 3 years ago had froze up and we need our bus system to be dependable. And so those are things we still need to tackle.
So the city only bought 2.
That's if I remember correctly, they have 2 that they bought through a federal grant.
Well, It's interesting because they're now talking about the transportation system and parking again on the other side of St. Mary's, and using these buses to get people to work at Mayo.
Yep.
And other places downtown.
And you know, we've applied for a federal grant on that would pay for half the money on that transit way and go in front of St. Mary's and run down to the city hall and come back. That's pretty flat. They want to build a big parking ramp down there. We don't want it on the west side. We don't want it just to be a ramp. We want it to be a facility, a village almost, that you can have an apartment and you can park your car there and come in. I'm still skeptical on it, and it's moving along its way for the city of Rochester, and we'll see how it turns out. But we have to do something on traffic, and I don't know what that real answer is, but I did go to Indianapolis and ride the rapid bus system, and that did work well. You know, we had thought about using a train before. The bus is a better system and far cheaper than using a train.
How about the legends? And the project of Riverside and walks along the river and all these things that they're talking about. What do you think?
That's the riverfront plan, and you know, it's been in the process for a long period of time. We own the property on 2nd Street, the parking ramp that needs to come down soon, and then we own all the way to Legends, and that used to be the Red Owl and Time Theater, and we own that building. So we voted to keep that building intact until we come back with a plan that shows could it be reused. December we had a business that was in there. I made a tour of the building after I heard that it was falling down, and it wasn't falling down, and so a couple council people decided we should save it. It's not historic. We voted that it's not. But you know, if it takes us 5 years to come up with a plan, which wouldn't be inconceivable time frame, we could put a small business in there or two and give them a leg up and have them use that building.
I know the issue of the pool, particularly at Silver Lake, and I know your position on it. What do you think now?
Well, I think it's a shame that I was born in 1959 and Silver Lake pool was built in 1959, and we have not added one outdoor pool since 1959. And the city of Rochester has grown quite a bit since that time. And so we're working hard. We did get funding for next year to keep both pools open. The trouble with the pool is that at Silver Lake is that it's just old. And the one at Soldiers Field is only about 25 years old, but the pipes are leaking and we have to redo that. So I think we're going to come up with a plan to redo Soldiers Field pool, pretty much the same place, same area. We're going to do a long-range plan to come up with what we want at Soldiers Field. And then at Silver Lake, we'll tear that pool down and we'll rebuild it. We're doing a master plan at Silver Lake that's supposed to be going right now. I would envision, maybe talking to different people, that the pool will get replaced, and then pickleball will go down there and have some courts, and then also the skate park. Then across the street on 7th Street, where the old snow dump used to be, there was an interesting concept to put in the Mayo Field there. And if we moved Mayo Field down there and had a ballpark down there, and it's a big enough area to do that enough room for parking, that might be a neat addition down there. So that's one idea that's coming up.
Okay. That sounds good. It sounds better than simply abandoning it.
Yes.
And where do you see the operating budget coming from?
Right now, you know, 2 years ago we went with we're glad to have a referendum for parks, which provides about $2 million a year. So right now we're working on some projects to take about half of that money, $1 million, in bond for it. And so we would borrow money, build projects now. It does two things. It kind of gives you a big bang right away for what you've done. But the other thing it does is it avoids construction inflation. And so, you know, what would the inflationary cost be in 20 years from now on a construction project? So if you did it now, that would be better. And then the other $1 million would go to fixing some of the things that we do have. We also use some grants. We get grants from the state of Minnesota for things that are always matching. So we'd have to match a fund on that, and so that $1 million goes to that. I'm proud of the city of Rochester, you know, the citizens that they voted for that. But you know, when you knock on doors and talk to people, parks touch everybody, and everybody loves the parks, and that's what we're working towards. We have a unique system in Rochester with our charter. We have 3 charter boards. RPU, the library, and parks. And so I give the parks money. I say I give, but the city council gives them money out of our budget, and then they do what they need to do with it. And so we don't get into the day-to-day operation. I probably do more than I want to, but we don't have any say in how they spend that money.
How about the RPU budget?
RP
They usually have a little bit of money at the end of the year that they give to the city council. Will they this year?
I believe they do have a little bit of a, but they also have reserve in there. They've got some big projects coming up, and they have a CIP budget coming up. They're going to put a new transformer plant out there on Marion Road. That's going to cost some money, and then they're bringing in another line into the Mill Clinic area, which is going to be a pretty big project for them. We're lucky to have RPU. I mean, they're our local. We own them, the citizens of Rochester. And in 2030, we got out of our SEMPA plan. And SEMPA was an idea cooperative for different municipalities. I think it was 40 years ago we signed that agreement. And you know, when you talk about RPU, short term to them is 5 to 10 years. You know, they're planning, and things have changed, and they're trying to become more environmentally conscious. We no longer burn coal in Rochester, and at some point that Silver Lake plant will go away.
What do you see as the main problem facing this city right now?
Well, I think COVID would be your biggest one, and then the other part would be the cost of housing. The cost of housing for Rochester, we need all types of housing, you know, but our single family dwelling rate has gone up. The cost of our average home has gone up. It used to be about, let's see here, 41% difference between us and the cities for a medium average home, and now we're down to about 12%. And you know, if you have a couple living in the cities and somebody says, geez, let's move to Rochester and we can save 40% on housing, they're going to move here. But if they can only save 10%, my fear is that they'll stay up there and somebody will commute down here, take that talent, take that paycheck out of Rochester and take it to the cities. That would be really horrible for Rochester. So that's an item that worries me a lot. And then employment, you know, we are 2% unemployment. How do we get more people working? Get people to come to Rochester and want to stay here.
And what is the answer to that? Our education institutions?
Well, part of it is our education, but the part of it is also, you know, our school system, our park system. You know, most people don't come to Rochester. You know, most people don't go to a city because the tax rate is low. They do because they have a lot of things you can do or see, and you know, art adds to that, and parks add to that, and you know, the cost of living is an item they look at, but it's not their number 1, 2, or 3 item. Schools is number 1.
So, what would you do to subsidize those costs for things to do here so that you're competitive with the cities, or what?
We want to be competitive with the cities, and we're not going to have Major League Baseball, but if we had a baseball stadium that was of decent size and good, people might like that. More parks are better. We just started our first meeting with the county, the city, and the school district. We have a tri-government meeting, and we had our first meeting. I'm a member of that. In working together, because we all work for the same taxpayer, and so I think the more that we can work together and have a common goal. There's some things we just don't have a common goal on, but some we do. You know, go back to education. You know, we do have our sales tax extension coming up. We'll probably be pushing that this year because we have to get it renewed. It's a different system that we've had in the past. So we can pick 5 projects, and the voters will be able to vote yes on 1 or 2 or 3 or no on all of them. And that has been a good thing for Rochester. We've added libraries, fire stations. We redid Highway 52 with that. We've spent a lot of money on higher education. You know, they have a $10 million building that the U needs to be building here in Rochester pretty soon. So we need to have them do that. So.
And what would you do to put that before the voters?
It's a different system that we've done in the past. I talked to Gary Newman, who used to be with the city administration, that we have to propose to the state legislative people. They have to look at our proposal, and then they take our proposal, say yes or no, and then we have to go to the voters. But to start the process, we need to find out in the city what do people need and what do they want? Where do they look at what we need to do?
Okay. All right. The And that's what you consider the greatest problem facing the city? The cost of housing, and it's competitive?
That's probably the biggest one that we have control over. You know, pandemic would be number one. I mean, we just don't know where that's all going to go. And so, you know, how do we get that to be better for us?
That is true.
So,
The idea of employees needed for our businesses is another one that has been brought up by other people on this program.
well, Mayo Clinic for 15 years, their number one problem they've had is finding enough help. And it's not a new problem, but it's an ongoing problem. And how do we solve that problem? And it's a tough one for us. You know, they used to refer to them as trailing spouse. You know, you have a talented person that comes to Rochester. What does that other person do? You know, and where do they live? And those all work into that.
All right. Yeah, I know John Wade, who he works with, Ready,
Yes.
is saying we've got to find more people that are trained for these jobs,
Yes.
to fill these jobs.
Yeah.
And
I would agree with John. And John's also a person that the whole area is our friend. And
Yes.
you know, we need Winona, we need Albert Lee, we need workers who come from all over the state and all from Iowa that come here to work. And we can't just be Rochester, because if we were just Rochester and close the borders, Mayo Clinic would have to close because they just don't have
That's
enough
right.
employees to handle that.
the area.
Yes.
All right. Biggest challenge in the immediate future?
Budget right now is, I think, a big issue. Tonight's going to be an interesting one to listen. I believe we have 4 votes to pass the budget. It's always hard, you know, when you go to a knock on someone's door and they say, my property taxes went up this much. My neighborhood's 19% property taxes, but that's valuation. And how do you don't get that until you sell. And if you sell, where are you going to move to? And so there's some difficulties when that comes, and it's hard for people to understand that.
As you make this report to the members of your ward, which part are you the most proud?
I'm proud of how we've done a better job of communicating. I'm on the KRLC radio on the third Wednesday or third Monday of every month. I'm with you about 3 times this year. We do Facebook. We do this flyer that goes out. We mail that out to every postal customer in the ward. So communications I'm most proud about. Probably one of the accomplishments that I think that worked out well is North Broadway. As hard as that was, I met with Public Works every Friday to walk through it and work through some of the issues with businesses. There's 105 businesses on that North Broadway section. And some were happy and some were not happy, and we took care of some of the problems, but everybody's happy with that, how that turned out. That was a big issue on East River Road. We did a traffic study and tried to do some calming there. Met with the neighbors top of COVID time, and met in a parking lot so we could socially distance, and had a meeting and asked them what they wanted to do. And I'd say 99% of the people are happy with what turned out there. So those are things that I'm proud about. I'm proud that we have 7 different opinions on the city council. And you listen and you work, and you have to work to get 4 votes. I'd like to get 5. 5 to 2 votes a good vote. That means that you listen to one extra person, and that's a nice thing to have. And so those are things that I'm proud about.
Do you see the same changes happening in the city council as in the county board, as people talk about going forward, either with retirement or running again?
Well, and if inside politics, and you talk to different people, and we had 4 positions open that were replaced people, and that was hard for us in the city council. How do you handle all these different personalities and things? On top of that, we had COVID. On top of that, we had a new city administrator, and Mrs. Elms has done a phenomenally good job. I've been very impressed with her, and she brought a lot of good talents, and she has a good way of working with people. Now the county board people, it sounds like there will be 4 people being replaced on the county board next year. So next year for us, for the city council, the 1st, 3rd, and 5th wards, so Patrick Keene and Campion and Palmer are all up, and so is the mayor. And so that'll be interesting to see how that turns out for us for next fall. So.
Well, we And our viewers are the beneficiaries of your willingness to cooperate and to tell about what you're doing and involve the public, and we thank you for that.
I appreciate that.
And for your work.
I appreciate that, and it's an honor.
And that you're happy
yes,
to be a city councilman.
Very happy. And you're serving your ward, you're serving your people, and that to me is what that job is. And I go back to, Chuck Azama just died, and I worked for Chuck Azama at the Y, and Chuck, we used to tell people he knew Shaun since he was this tall, but it's about service. It's about giving back to your community, and I remember when Chuck took the door off his office, and I have an open door policy. And
he was a good one.
He was a very good one, and he promoted Rochester and loved Rochester, and I always said Denny Hansen loved Rochester, and he had a little different personality, but he was out there too, and did a great job for Rochester, and I remember a lot of the different council people that I've watched for over the 30 years, and they give up something in their family, and they give back to the community, and we've had some very good council people on the council, and we do now. I like the fact that you have 7 different opinions.
Shaun Palmer, thank you very much for what you do for your ward and also for the area as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, our viewers, for your interest in our city, our area, our government, and we'll be with you next week, same time, same channel. In the meantime, have a very good week and a very good night.